Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. All my subscribers that have been with me for a long time and the new ones. And today I'm going to repot one of my oldest orchids. I was trying to remember from how long ago, but it's probably 5 or 6 years old. And because I didn't keep a record, and that's maybe something we should all do. I went back in my videos to look, and I started in 2015 and I had it, but I repotted it. This is the first time you actually really see it. I repotted it on May 29th, the video of May 29th, 2017. And it has, because it's older, it has a very long, because the monopodial Phalaenopsis orchids, they grow long and centrally. And as the leaves keep coming new and the older ones fall off, that stem that's in the media is getting, root is getting longer and longer. So when I was repotting it in that video, and if I knew how, I'd put a WW of when it was, but it was the 29th. I don't know how to put writing on to come up on your video, but I should learn. Maybe this winter. Anyway, it was May 29th, 2017, and I had 2 pots here, and I had taken it out of the other pot, and I tried to put it in the first pot. It didn't fit because it was so long. And then I put it in the purple pot that it's in now, and it barely fit. And I don't want to cut it off. I know they say you can cut the bottom off and the top does fine, but I didn't want to. And I had planned to get another road comb because they're the proper shape and use it, but I haven't gotten one and I haven't painted one. And I was, it's getting close to watering day. Usually Sunday or Monday is watering day. And I was doing what I always say to do. I was picking out the bark piece by piece till I got about halfway down, and I noticed it was getting quite soggy down there, and it did smell also. So then of course I was going to wait. Okay, Carolyn, you can wait and get your pot and paint it and do it. And I thought, oh no, I better do it. Besides, I'm housebound. We're still in the smoke. The air is terrible. So what a better thing to do. So last night I ran out and got the very end of a huge bag of my Rexius bark. I don't know where I'm going to find any more. I'll have to go hunting on the internet, because to ship from the States where it comes from, that's quite expensive now. So I'm going to be doing some searching, because I do want to stick to the fir bark. And then other things to mix with that bark. I always, in a bigger pot, I will use some charcoal. So I have some charcoal ready. And make sure if you have charcoal that you're getting this one is charcoal Dutch tree. It's especially for like aquariums or planters. So it is a nice, quite large, chunky charcoal, 2 liters that I picked up when I got my bark. And there was 2 bags there real cheap, because Hannah's Orchards here, they went out of, the only place you could get really natural orchid stuff, they went out of business. And there was 2 big bags there. And Jack said, oh, you better get both of them. Oh no, I'll never use both of them. Well, I'm eating my words. I'm at the end of that bag of bark. And that's why I switched to bark. If you don't have a lot of orchids, you just have a few. The ones they sell pre-put together for just orchids or Phalaenopsis orchids are just fine. I like a bark mix, and I like charcoal and perlite. And be careful if you're going to be mixing your own too, that you're not getting vermiculite instead of perlite, because perlite is, it's a volcanic glass, so it's natural, and it will help aerate, but it will also help hold moisture. So there's none available in Salmon Arm. I bought a bag quite some time ago, and it was way too small. I want some big stuff, or I'd rather not use it. So that's how I stand with that. So if you're in an area where you don't get much moisture and you want your pots to hold more moisture, so you have your bark and your charcoal, so it doesn't get too little pots. I don't worry about the charcoal because the water doesn't sit there as long, but a bigger pot, then you got more water sitting in the center and that, so I like to put some charcoal in. And perlite or something else of your choice, be it clay pellets or something to mix with the bark to help hold that humidity. I just don't like moss. Maybe I've just taken it out of too many orchids, and I know there's many ways to grow orchids out there, and we all have our own little thing. And almost like 97% of my orchids are grocery store orchids that have already been in stress before I got them. So I've done a lot of them. Now, other than the few species I have ordered, and I'll probably order more. And if you're new to orchids, to start out with a healthy plant, especially if you can get somebody that's using bark, that's even better because they're not going with that stress from being in moss and then going to bark. So really, rather than have all the troubles that someone started before you got the plant, like the moss should not be packed solid around the roots so they can't breathe. But because they go through so much, and money is important when they're in a great big business, so by the time you've got that orchid, it's been potted so tight in moss, the roots cannot breathe, and they're meant to breathe. In the wild, they're meant to breathe. So, you know, those that are growing in moss and doing well, they fluff it up. But the reason I do bark is because just being an average housewife, what's your problem, huh? Are you crying? Okay, Maggie's crying. She's housebound too because we usually take her. I won't say that word because she knows too many words, but you go in, hey, you have to be shut-in for a while. It's very, very smelly smoke out there. I don't think it's good for Maggie or us. So anyway, now you distracted me. Okay, so I was at the end of my bark, and so I rinsed it out because I wanted to make sure I had all the fine material that was sitting in the bottom of the bag out. So I soaked it 24 hours. So when you have your bark, it is very dry, and when it's new, it doesn't hold water as long. So, and they've been in moss probably, and they're used to a lot more water than they're going to get in bark. It is a change. So moss, that's what I'm saying, is supposed to be fluffy and to be kept fluff, not close on all the roots. So you don't get it like that by the time you get your plants. So when you switch to bark, the bark is dry at first, and it takes maybe, I'm trying to say, maybe you soak it your 24 hours. Now don't let it dry out because if it dries out, then you definitely will have to soak it about 10 minutes in a bowl. They like to be watered again before they completely dry out. And the best way to tell that is to go halfway down, pick out a few pieces, feel the bark, look at the roots, and you can judge from then. You may have to water, I like to say never water more than twice a week. You may have to twice a week. Oh, Carolyn. Okay. Never water more than twice a week. That's sort of my mantra. So you may after the initial plant is potted and it's had a chance to rest, some people suggest you don't water it for a couple of weeks, and I understand that. It's to let things heal and dry up a little bit. But after that initial, let's just say you wait a week and then you water. When you start watering, you may want to water twice a week if it's running off really quickly. So if your bark is fairly large, this is large size bark, the water is going to run off quicker. The smaller the bark, the more moisture it will hold, and it will run off slower. So you could have a mixture of bark. You could take some smaller pieces. So the smaller pieces, they naturally are closer together, but it's still an airy mix. And it's going to have areas where there is a little more moisture because of the smaller pieces. And I do have some smaller pieces in here. It is kind of it's mostly large, but there is smaller pieces. So just that first, it takes takes maybe a month, and then the bark starts to actually hold on to some of that water. And then, you know, once a week is what I do all the time and always have. And only during dry spells, like we've had 1 day of rain the last month, and the month before 1 day of rain. So, and smoke and fires. So I'm watering twice a week now. And it's been very dry. So you have to judge that, and I still say the best way to get to know your plant is just check in there. I just was pulling out a few pieces. Okay, so I said because of that, I know this plant needs potted soon. It's starting to smell, it's starting to break down in there, and so I decided what I'm going to do is I took the orchid out of this pot, which will go in the pot, the purple pot that I'm taking the one I'm going to repot out of, and so there'll be a switcheroo. The reason I picked this one is the only one I have that has the depth for that long root. So, and you know, I love this size hole. This is a nice big hole, lots of air, lots of holes, so I like that too. So that's what we're going to do. Let me just get that orchid. Good girl. Yeah, you lay down. Okay, this is deep purple, and she is the one almost every winter. She's in my window and just full of flowers. Last year her flowers were 5 or 6 months. I mean, she's been beautiful, and I've been watching this little green spout at the bottom that I keep thinking is going to be a basil keiki, but it hasn't amounted to anything. So it is right. Okay, so anyway, let's get her out, and we'll take her little butterfly sign off that I've got ready, and try and get this so you can see. So I'm going to hold her around the core right here, and I'm going to dump this moss out because I had gone down halfway, and some of the pieces are still big, but in the center it was, because this pot I think is big, but it has smaller holes, so it wasn't really getting as much air as say these bigger holes or the road cone. I saw a greenhouse on the internet, and I've been having trouble with my computer, but I want to go back and see if I can find it, because I tried to get some pots from there, but they don't ship. But they make all their orchids in this huge big greenhouse are in long cone shaped like the road cone, terracotta pots with great big holes, and just their phals and everything in these great big pots, and it was beautiful. I love those pots. But it's hard to get some things. But if you're in your States, you might want to check into that. I know they sell them, they just don't ship. Okay, let's see if we can get this out of here. Whoa. Okay. Okay, we got her out. I'll let you have a look over here. Okay. Now what I've done is I'll just pick off any, here we go with the messy floor again, anything I don't like the look of. There's one that must have dried up some time ago. I'll just pick that off. I know. Well, I got lots of time when I'm a shut-in here to clean the floor. This is sometimes the bark sticks in pieces, so let's have a good look. Most of the roots, now the ones that were closer to holes, are this one I think was winding around the top of the pot. They are a little greener because they've been getting some light. And as it's in the orchid pot with bigger holes, those roots will get light. They don't need to be green. They're in the pot. These are quite a natural color for the roots to be when they're in the pot. And they photosynthesize from their leaves too. So it's really important. Oh, here's one. See, this one must have been in a wet area. There we go. So rather than run a lot of water, what I've done is I've filled the sink with some water, and I'll just set it in there for a minute and just make sure it's all rinsed off. But when you do one now, see how long old flower stems way down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, over here 5 old flower stems. Another one over here. So we want to just make sure that this old root, I don't feel anything soggy. There's some old things I've peeled off. These are nice and firm. They're not rotting at all. There was a couple bad spots where it must have been a little tight, but I'm just going to put it in the sink in some water. There we go. And just bounce it up a bit. I'm glad it's not in bloom. It did have beautiful bloom, and I want to make sure I get that. But yeah, there was, I wasn't liking it. There's some big pieces here, but there are some pieces just breaking up. So I could probably make use of some of these big pieces. I don't know if I heated or something. I don't like to. So it's good for the garden. Everything's good for the garden. Okay, let's put that over there. Now, here we go. Now, I have 4 little pieces of chopped up brick, just for the bottom, because you see this is quite narrow, just to make sure the holes aren't plugged by any of the bark. So then we'll put in some bark in there. She's got a long stem, so yeah, the purple pot just hanging over the side. And let's compare, like, I do have that little extra bit of depth, so I'm hoping, I want to keep it for years yet, and I know they cut them off because they don't fit, but I hate to cut them off. So let me just check. We don't want anything mushy. They all feel pretty good. Something there. A lot of old plant stuff here. Okay. Yeah, we still love you. We want you around a lot of years yet without chopping anything off. Okay, she's looking good. So let's get her in the pot. Now, these ones that are a little green, I'm just going to put up here for a minute, because I'm still going to have them sort of around. Some of them will be near the surface. Now I'm trying to get her sort of centered, but boy, her roots are very firm and I don't want to break any. So now I'm just going to slowly shake in some bark. But she is filling up this pot a lot. Like the roots are taking up a lot of space. Now, I don't want to break anything. They're very crisp. So we'll just shake those in. Sometimes, I guess when you've had an orchid a long time and it's been very rewarding and flowers for so long, you want to really look after it. And it's kind of like any pet. You know, you don't want to send it in for an operation if you don't have to. Well, I don't want to operate if I don't have to either on this one. So this is why I am going to use this pot. And it's used to bark, so it's not going to have a shock that way. There's one that I broke a little bit. I'm not happy about that. They're very crisp. Let's just wind these around the top here. They'll still be okay. The center is okay. But just very carefully put some bark on that. Weigh it down a bit. There we go. So we had one little shot. I think we're going to be good. It's taking a growing. I don't see any like real new active growth. Some of these have a small little bud on them, but maybe this will make her happier. Okay, takes quite a bit of bark. Now, something I like to do, I'll pick out a few of the pieces of bark from the old pot and I'll put them near the surface because they are breaking down quicker, but they'll be where I can see them. They'll be drying quicker because they're not in the pot. And I always say it's like if you go camping or a sleepover, you take your pillow with you, you take something that you really are used to having with you. So what I do is I've done it before, is with an older pot. And I think they know somehow, so I'll just pick out a few of these old pieces of bark that are a little bigger. I'll probably take mostly big chunks, but no flat ones. And because they are starting to break down, the microorganisms that are breaking them down, they'll know, they'll still, when I'm watering from the surface down, they'll know that it'll feel like more like home than all new bark. And I'm not using any narrow pieces, but I think it's just a good thing. So, I mean, this is wet and that, but most of the broken down pieces are all crumbly. So if I grab a few of these big pieces, sorry for turning my back to you there, that should be enough. You know, they'll notice things we don't notice. Like dogs notice things we don't notice. They hear further away, they smell. Well, so does our orchid, I think. No. Okay, there's a little bit of my old home. So it makes them feel happier. So this will only get watered once a week. First, and then I hope to see some new growth coming. Nice, healthy new growth. So I'm gonna shake some of this charcoal around in there. And it's sort of going down into the holes. This is dirty stuff. You know, you should wear gloves when you're doing this. There's slivers, there's dirty charcoal, but I'm one of these people have always used my hands milking cow in the winter with no barn, probably why I have arthritis in some of my fingers. So yeah, Yeah, I had a beautiful Jersey milk cow. And the cream made the most beautiful butter you cannot get anywhere I have tried. And everything, your baking, everything. That Jersey cow, she was something else. And anyway, I made sure she went to a good home when I had to move and I got rid of her. And a great big farm, actually, out White Lake, which is near here. And they got out one morning and she was dead in the pasture. They said she must have just missed me, I don't know, but I used to like wash her down. I was very good, but for years I never had a barn, so I just milked her where she was, even if it was winter. So that, you know, not too good for your hands. So wear gloves. Don't be like me. It's like winter. I hate to wear a hat, hate to wear gloves. And I'm always in my bare feet. Can't see, but lots of times I'm in my bare feet. Okay. I had 2 pots soaking because I knew this was a big pot. Now, what we want to see is on the last video I showed you those nice new roots coming with nice long shiny tips. That's what I want to see. So I started poking around because I hadn't seen any. There's some nice roots there, but I haven't seen that nice. And that's important. Even if she flowers late or misses a flower, I want to see some nice new roots, leaves coming, hopefully. Because I've had years and years of enjoyment out of her. Now she's getting the place of honor in this beautiful pot. So there we go. There's one sticking out here. It has a little tip on it. For some reason it's sticking out there. And I can't put it back in because it'll break. So we'll just see how it does sticking out. So this is kind of like its watering day. And I'll probably let it rest for probably for a month. And then I'll be watering once a week probably with this big pot. But then I'll start fertilizing with a really good fertilizer for the second hind number and the last one for, you know, a nice for encouraging root growth and leaves. And the first is nitrogen, and that will help with the green, but I won't switch to the real high middle number than the other 2 numbers until I'm trying to encourage some spiking or blossoming, but I'll make sure it's got a good high numbers for sure of, I should say, nitrogen and, is it potassium or phosphorus? Oh, the third number, the third one. Sorry. I know everybody will say, oh. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. She's in her pot and she's upright instead of laying on her side. And I think she's going to be happy. If I could get that little root in there, I would. I don't think I can. There, are you going to go in there? No, you're not. Okay, stay there. There's another one, so we'll see how they do. So here we are. She's in her pot. She's upright. And for a long time, the little basil keiki that's growing here hasn't really been doing much, but it hasn't fell off either. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, how well she does. But I'm glad I did her. And so I want to thank you again for joining me. And no funny stories today, I guess. I'm just funny all on my own. And thanks again.